So you're telling me G1 beat Hogan Mode in a Game 7 of a Grand Finals of a tournament, but they weren't playing with their full roster. You're telling me they subbed in Dying of Team Monaco in place of Oli, and yet they still have the World Championship Wildcard coming up. Could not have seen this one coming, guys. Hey everybody, so welcome back to Aspect 13 here with another video. Today we're going to be going through the World's Wildcard and predicting the results of the World's Wildcard, which is the first stage of Worlds, and I'll be using Pickstop for it. But before we got started, I just wanted to point that out because I haven't talked about it yet, and yeah, G1 beat Hogan Mode, a team that I had rated higher than them in that video, top 10 teams not in the Spring Major. But they did it with a different roster. They subbed out Oli for Dying, and I think that was a mistake. A lot of people think it was a mistake. I know Rise talked about it on the Chalk podcast because they apparently didn't think they were going to make Worlds. Or perhaps they didn't know they could make Worlds. Either way, it's quite crazy considering the fact that they've literally made Worlds Wildcard. They had like a 50-50 chance, now they made it, and that's a big potential mistake. Removing Oli from the roster, and now they're going to have to play with him again. Here, let me pull it up. They're going to have to play with Oli for the World Championship as their RLCS roster. So we'll see how that goes. But speaking of G1 in general, these are the 16 teams. So to run through it, we got Complexity, G2, and Space Station from North America. We got Oxygen, G1, and Moist from Europe. We've also got Falcons and Twisted Minds from Middle East. We've got Team Secret and Crew from South America. We've got Pioneers and Power from OCE. We've got Gaming Gladiators and Elevate from APAC. And lastly, we've got Limitless and French Class from Sub-Saharan Africa. That rounds out our 16. Now, only 8 of these teams move on. It's a Swiss stage. We don't know the first round matchups because the first round matchups are done via draw. However, the top 8 seeds get to pick their matchups in that order. 1st through 8th get to pick, so the 8th doesn't really get a pick. They just get whoever's left over. And that means that some of the top seeds, which are expected to be your Moist, your Complexity, they will likely get those Sub-Saharan Africa or perhaps an APAC team, whoever they get their pick. And that does factor into my decision a little bit. And just with that getting started, I do think that if I had to pick 8 teams to advance, the 2 that I would feel most confident are clearly Complexity and Moist. They just did very well at the Spring Major, both of them. Complexity losing to Vitality in Rule 1, both top 4 teams, Vitality winning the event. And Moist also lost to Rule 1, and I believe the team before that was K-Corp, so they only lost to also top 4 teams. And in general, both these teams just look really good. They both, in Moist's case, they won 2 in a row, which is what you're going to have to do in this event, win 3 in a row. Or not in a row, but you're going to have to win 3 matches in the Swiss, and I think they both are the clear favorites to do it. So now we've got 6 spots left, and there are a lot of teams on this list that could qualify. I genuinely think pretty much everyone in this, these first 2 rows could qualify. You also got Twisted Minds, Power, G1, Elevate. I think all those teams could qualify. Maybe people are shocked to throw Elevate in there. I think they look pretty good at Spring Major. They took a game off Vitality, and although they got swept by Liquid, I think they are the best they've looked all season, and this is weaker competition than they faced in the Spring Major. Both those teams they faced are all through to the main event. So we'll see how it goes. Speaking of main event, I'll briefly mention it. The top 8 teams are Carmine Corp, Team Liquid, Team Vitality, Team BDS, Genji Mobile One Racing, FaZe Clan, Ninjas in Pajamas, and Rule 1. Now, the biggest shocker here is that there's only 2 North American teams in the top 8 auto-qual spots. There's 4 European teams, and those last 2 spots are taken up by 1 South American team and 1 Middle Eastern team. Now, I will say the odd one out, if you had to pick one's probably Ninjas in Pajamas. They're still a strong team, don't get me wrong. In fact, I believe they deserve to be in the top 16. But whether or not they'll be top 8, I think remains to be seen. I don't know if they'll make it to top 8. But they are here because of South America's combined excellence across all 3 majors. I think they probably were the weakest, or the weakest one seed out of Sam in a while. I don't know. South America just had a bad major, and maybe it was because they got bad matchups. They did. This team did beat Furious, so they beat a team that won a regional in North America, but they also lost to Complexity. And who else did they lose to? They lost to Optic as well. So we'll see. I think that they are strong, but I think they're probably the weakest out of these top 8 that all qualified. The rest of these teams pretty much all would be unanimous, deserve to be here. I think you've got the clear top 4 in Europe. You've got the top 2 that in NA have crossed the season. I know FaZe missed the major, but they've both done very well across season, and Rule 1 is coming off a top 4, so all deserve to be there. Well, let's get back to it. The main brunt of this video is these 16 teams and whittling it down to 8. Now, if I had to pick another 2 that I feel pretty secure, I think it would be safe to say Falcons and Space Station. Space Station, although they didn't have an incredible major, they're only losing to Carbine Corp and Gen.G. Gen.G, a team that theoretically they should have beaten as the 1 seed out of North America. However, it was a Game 5 with multiple overtimes thrown in. And at the end of the day, these are all strong players on a very solid team that rotates around each other and plays well together. And Gen.G got top 6, so it's not a bad loss, not at all. A team in the top 8, so I feel pretty secure saying Space Station's going to make it through. And then Falcons, they have a lot of LAN experience as a trio. And then it's particular, 2 of them have even extra LAN to fall LAN. They didn't play with that Khaled. So a lot of LAN experience, a lot of experience in MENA, and they've been one of the top 3 teams, I should say, because I got 3rd this last split, but they've been one of the best team for quite a while, and this was their weakest split by far. I think they'll do a bounce back for Worlds, and I feel pretty secure that they'll make it. Maybe not far in the entire tournament, but I definitely feel confident that they'll make it out of wildcards. And now we're starting to run out of spots. Now there's only 4 spots, and things start to get harder. If I had to pick another 2, or I'll go one by one now. I think that I'll pick the last one because then we'll line up. These are in rounds. So, for example, in the round 3 uppers, there'll be 4 teams that went 2-0 because it's a Swiss bracket, and so 2 teams would make it on. So in my theoretical, that would be Complexity and Moist. So I'll pick a 3rd team here in that middle round. So they went 3-1. They only took 1 loss. And if I had to pick another team that would take 1 loss, this might be overrating North America a little bit. You know what? No, I'm not going to overrate North America. I actually think I'll pick Crew. I was thinking about picking G2 here, but I think, in fact, I'll just say they're also going to move on. But I would put Crew a little bit over them because I think that they've looked quite strong in South America. They had the best spring split. Although they did worse than Ninja to Pajamas at the Spring Major, they arguably played harder opponents. They played Gen.G and Rule 1. And I think most of us could agree that those were harder. Well, maybe not harder than Complexity. Although, then again, Rule 1 did beat Complexity. So no, I feel justified saying that. I feel justified saying Crew had 2 tougher opponents than all 3 of the opponents that Ninja to Pajamas played. So I would still rate them quite highly. And although this was a 3-1 loss, and so was the Gen.G, their match against Rule 1 had quite a few overtimes and a 5-minute overtime in the last game. The match against Gen.G, a little more lopsided, but their first 2 losses were 1 gold games. I think they look better. I can't say they look better than Ninja to Pajamas. Ninja to Pajamas won a game, a series. But I think Crew are looking better in general, and I do think that they'll advance out of this wildcard stage. Moving on to G2. They had probably their weakest split in a while. I'm going to pull up what their exact results were because it was quite a weak split from them. But I think they'll make it through. I think these are 3 solid players. A super team at the time it was formed potentially. You got JNAP, Chicago, and Atomic. And let's see, they got top 4 in their last regional. Oh yeah, they were playing for spot. They still were in the race for majors. They just needed to win a couple more. This was a pretty bad loss for them. But Optic were locking in their spot, locking in other people's spots. It's a weaker G2, but I still see it. Now that leaves us with 2 spots. I think if there are 2 spots, I have to call out Oxygen here. Over G1 because they didn't have a roster fiasco. And genuinely, although I thought they've looked poor, I still think they'll put it together when it comes to Worlds, when Worlds is on the line. Let me go. I think this is the one. Let me go back to the major. The Worlds, I should say. You got Archie, Joyas, Ixo, and they had a poor split, but I think they're just talented. It's just a talented roster. You got Archie, Joyas, EXO as well. Truly talented roster, and I would be surprised if they couldn't put that talent to work, especially against some of these opponents they might be playing, and qualify on through. Perhaps a European and North American centric thing to say, but I feel pretty secure. And now this leaves us with one more spot. And I don't think I'm going to pick G1. I'll talk about all the teams that could make it and why I don't think they will if they won't. I think G1, just that roster move there is going to cost them. I think they definitely will get back on form by the time Worlds happens, but they're making up a lot of ground. All these other teams have been scrimming together this whole time, whereas G1 spent who knows how long exactly, but at least a week, I assume, in prep of that tournament, scrimming with a different player. And that's just not good. It's not going to be good for them. And I don't think they're going to bomb out 0-3 or anything, but I don't think they're going to qualify through. I think they'll be eliminated at wildcard stage. Now, next up, let's talk about Pioneers. I think Pioneers have looked like the best team in OCE, and this was actually a rough split for them because they had to sub in a player for Hunter. They had to sub in Tango for Hunter in multiple day 3s of OCE. I forget exactly what was happening. It was something with school or the schedule didn't work out. But having to sub in for the last 2 regionals a player is part of the reason why they missed the major. And although they had a poor regional 1 with all 3 players, I think that contributed to their losses. That said, so that's my point being, they might be better than Power in this event, in this wild card, but I still don't think they'll make it, which also now spoils, I'll talk about Power, but they're all good players, but I think OCE, and they're not a bad region. I don't want to dispute OCE hate because they could. These are in the everyone that I'm talking about right now is in the tier that they could make it through. I'm just predicting what I think will happen. All these teams have the ability in them, including Pioneers. I just think that OCE's gotten a little bit weaker and weaker over time because they just don't have as good scrims. And we'll see what happens. I think, unfortunately, I don't see them making it through. Same would go with Power. They looked really good in the Spring Major. They went to Game 5 against Rule 1, but it's probably the weakest looking Game 5 you could have because it was a reverse sweep and Game 5 was Brazil. So Rule 1 really dominated them at the end. But taking 2 games off Rule 1 is no mean feat, but I don't see it happening for OC against even a Twisted Minds, for example, who are, although below, I should talk about them now. They were below Rule 1, they were quite good in general in this split. Actually, I'm going to talk about it a little longer because I want to talk about Elevate. I don't think Elevate are going to make it through, but I think they have the best ability to make it through a wildcard that any APAC team ever has. They've had ups and downs across the season. They didn't go undefeated like a lot of people predicted. Teams like Gaming Gladiators took away a major spot, but I think Elevate's looking stronger than ever. They took a game off Vitality, and they could go 3-2 or even 3-1 maybe. I don't see it happening, but it's a possibility. But that's why I'm not picking them, because it would take winning 3 series, and only one of those realistically is going to come against a Sub-Saharan Africa team. Which, speaking about, I'll quickly talk about why. So the Sub-Saharan Africa teams are, generally speaking, historically have been weaker. Although one of them beat an APAC team last season, we'll see. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's get back to who's the last team that's going to make it. I've pretty much eliminated everybody. I'll talk. Gaming Gladiators will also knock out. Don't think they're going to make it. So that really leaves Team Secret and Twisted Minds. At the end of the day, this is just tough. I'll talk about them. So, Team Secret here, right? They've gotten. Let me pull up results. They've gotten 4th place, and 2nd place. Not a bad split. In a lot of other regions like North America or Europe, this would qualify you for LAN, but not in South America. They have 2 spots. They weren't good enough. That said, it's still a good team. It's their weakest split by far. They were playing close against Crew, but they're taking losses like W7M that they really shouldn't be taking. And honestly, it was just their weakest split. The only thing that gives me hope is that they did have that top 4 at the fall major. So they've proven themselves on LAN. Then again, their most recent major, they lost to Crew, although it was a best of 5. And that was a pretty big match to make top 8. So we shall see about them. I'm not sold, but I do think if I don't predict them top 8, they're the next most likely for sure. And that same thing goes with Twisted Minds, because I'm considering these 2. I think these 2 are pretty neck and neck. Twisted Minds have been better than Falcons this past split. They got 2 2nd places and a 3rd place. And they beat Rule 1 once and Falcons twice this split. the best they've ever looked. The fact that they did better than Falcons is kind of telling. And I do think Falcons going to bounce back, but the fact is, teams are catching up to Falcons. And if that, it really is a sign of one of two things. Either Falcons has fallen off, or I think more likely is that MENA caught up. And if the latter is the case, then I think MENA does much better than their Worlds last season. They might have one or even two. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick them because I think the region's just gotten a lot stronger since last season. Last season, Falcons were a proven team. They truly belonged in the top 16, and I don't think they got top 8 at Worlds, but they got second at the Spring Major, truly deserving of being around that top 8 status. And once again, MENA did earn that third spot in that spot in the main event, which earned a third spot a third team spot at Worlds. And I just think they're better this season. We'll see for sure, but I would not be surprised to see 2 of them qualify through. We'll see how this goes, but this was my 8, with the very next honorable mention out being Team Secret. We'll see how it goes. I got Moist, Complexity, G2 Space Station, Oxygen, Falcons, Crew, and Twisted Minds. And I think I should note here, because obviously Team Secret has multiple lands under their belt, Twisted Minds also has land vets. Well, 2 of them are. They have Senzo, who's been to 2 lands, the World Championship and the Fall Major over a year ago, last season. And they've got SMW, who is at last Worlds. So the only player that hasn't been to a LAN is Venom. And although that obviously is a little LAN rookie experience, they have enough veteran presence there to carry them. So I'm not worried about them having a rookie. Team Secret doesn't have a rookie. So I thought I should mention that because some people might favor a Team Secret that has LAN experience, but Twisted Minds has more than you might think. All right, that's all for the top 8. So now I'm going to move on to the next step, which is picking teams that are 3-0. And I'll try to make this quick, because I think I already pretty much mentioned it. I've already talked about why I favor Complexity and Moist. And really just to hammer it home, Moist only lost... wrong. This is the right one. Moist only lost to Real 1 and K-Corp, the 3rd and 4th place teams. Who did Complexity lose to? They also lost to Real 1, and they lost to Team Vitality, the 1st and 4th place teams. So these teams both played well on LAN, and they both were losing to top teams only. I don't expect them to take unexpected losses. Now, it's not like this is a guarantee they'll go 3-0, but I do guarantee that, as best I can anyway, it's not obviously 100% guaranteed, but I think they'll make it through, and if I had to put a guess on who would go 3-0, it would be them. Alright, same deal with 0-3. Oh wow, pre-selected. I think it will be French Class and Limitless. That's wacky. Let's talk about French Class. I think that I don't want to completely underrate Sub-Saharan Africa, but they are historically the weakest region, and although one of their 2 teams got a win last season, that was against an APAC team with a Grand Champ sub, if I'm remembering correctly, or low SSL anyway. And point being here that French Class is clearly weaker than their Limitless, the other team from Sub-Saharan Africa. They lost all 3 Spring Regionals to them, and I think that they're going to be the weakest team at the World Championship. Maybe they'll take a game. I'm definitely not opposed to them taking some games. I just don't think they'll take a series. I don't see it. And then Limitless. It really comes down to Gaming Gladiators or Limitless. And I don't want to discredit Limitless. They're the strongest team Sub-Saharan Africa has ever had. I think not only just because everyone gets stronger a year later, but I actually think relative to the other teams at Worlds, Limitless is stronger than last year's Sub-Saharan Africa teams. I truly believe that. They've gotten better relative to the crowd. I don't know if it's enough, though. I don't know if it's enough to overcome Gaming Gladiators, because Gaming Gladiators also got an upgrade. They got OSM, who wasn't on their team last year. He was their coach. So they've got an import upgrade from EU Gaming Gladiators, and I just don't see it. And Elevate, I think they're a tier above these teams I'm talking about, so I don't even know if they should be in this discussion, but I'll briefly talk about it. They just look better. They took a game off Vitality. They look better than they did earlier in the season when they were struggling. I don't see them going 0-3 either. So that really just leaves Limitless. And I didn't mean to pick both Sub-Saharan African teams, but that's just the way it goes. They are more likely to go 0-3. Although, especially in Limitless's case, they could take a game. In fact, I don't think they'll qualify. I don't think they'll win 3. But when I say game, I mean series. I think Limitless is most likely to take a series. And in fact, I would be shocked if Limitless didn't take a game. Whereas French Class could get swept out of the tournament. I don't see it happening, but they could. I think Limitless will take some games, and of these two teams, Limitless is more likely to take a series. Just of all the teams remaining, they're least likely to take a series, if that makes sense, compared to like your G1s. Well, I will bring about G1. If any non-Sub-Saharan Africa team was to go 0-3, it could be G1 because of that roster move. I mentioned that as my hook to the video because it's just crazy. They beat Hogan mode with a sub, not even a sub, but they tried out a different player. It's nuts, but that's the way it is. So we'll see what happens. It would be a shocker, but that would be funny. Not funny to see, but interesting to see if G1 ended up costing themselves on accident through that. But anyway, that's the video. I'll lock it in. If you're interested in using this, it's a nice, fun little like game website prediction game called pickstop.gg. I'll share a link in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the content. You'll see more. I appreciate all the support on the video so far, and I hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.